Hello, students. This is the conclusion of the essay Negritude, a Humanism of the 20th Century. Negritude movement was launched in the 1930s by Leopold Sedar Senghor, Ames Césaire, and Leon Gontran Damas. It was one of the most remarkable cultural movements rooted in the question of Black identity, consciousness, and solidarity. It was conceived as a reaction to Western domination. It sought to dispel denigrating myths and stereotypes linked to black people. The aim of Negritude movement was to acknowledge the culture, history, and achievements of black people, as well as to reclaim their contributions to the world and to restore their rightful place within the global community. It is interesting to note how the author of this essay has engaged with negritude as not just about self affirmation or liberation from subjugation, but in terms of its contribution to humanism. As a project, it relied on a synthesis of intellectualism and the arts to make critical statements about the black world in relation to the workings of the universe. One such statement is Africa's belief in solidarity, where life forces seek to knit themselves together and give priority to the group over the individual without undermining his person. Just as parts of the body play different roles to ensure the functionality of the whole, every culture has unique attributes that enable it to contribute to the development of humanity. Africa has its own values and they significantly play on the civilization of the universal. The notion of teamwork, which drives the running of today's world, connects with the idea of solidarity that Africans hold firmly and which is disseminated through negritude. Negritude also carries with it the philosophy of African art. While the Western art came to preoccupy itself with realism, naturalism, and other styles that drew from direct observation of the physical universe, Africa has taught the world that art is not only about photographic mimicry of the material world but an attempt to deeply engage the imaginations of variegated audiences through representations that reflect elevated artistic experimentation. That mode of production currently rules the art world. In retrospect, Picasso was fascinated by that creative paradigm and took from Africa the style that changed modern European art. Bear also attested to that richness. When he came to Nigeria in 1950 to teach English, his goal was changed as he realized that the people had rich creative culture that deserved to be tapped and widely disseminated. He founded the Black Orpheus, through which he translated into English the works of Francophone African writers, including the founders of Negritude. Then he could stimulate similar creative efflorescence in the English speaking West Africa and provide vehicle for the growing of new writers and artists, many of whom demonstrated great talent in these areas. Bayer had no black identity to reform. He was a man of Jewish background. His project premised on propagating the rich values of the African people he met and was akin to what negritude stood for. Through negritude and other similar movements, the people of Africa have as well asserted the value they place on the concept of community, which emphasizes peaceful coexistence and not segregation or violence. Those who have witnessed the abuse and injustice within the French colonial system that motivated the founding of negritude, or the victims of apartheid and the transatlantic slave trade, would appreciate that Africans have been considerably peaceful in their protest against the acts of inhumanity meted out to them. That way, they make known their philosophy regarding interpersonal existence. The conflicts in various parts of Africa today have strong link with the very historical circumstances that motivated the founding of negritude. Criticism of negritude. Regarding the criticism against negritude, as exemplified by the government sponsored publication I Hate Negritude, it looks like the critics do not have a good grip on the philosophical underpinning of the movement. They perhaps hold on to the literal understanding of negritude, which is etymologically rooted in the word negro that evokes the notion of blackness in a pejorative sense. The Africa's projection of its personality as a people reflects the tendency of self presentation which is inherent in humans, both as individuals and as groups, especially when they experience some sense of marginalization. What rather deserves condemnation is the kind of narcissist attitude that produces the prejudice which Africans react to. The claim of superiority of a race on another is more an expression of inferiority complex than retuned to subjugation associated with it. Critics have argued that Senghor has overplayed the idea of homogeneity of black cultural values. Attention is drawn to the varieties of indigenous cultures beside the infiltration of foreign cultures which have been domesticated. Krumah, for instance, has observed that African societies can now be seen to have three distinct cultural heritages: Western or Christian, and Arabic or Islamic, and traditional cultures. The point is to integrate All these in a way that will not compromise the material and spiritual well being of the African in the technological age. Critics of Singar think that he is being too traditionalist in his demand for distinctive Africanity. There are also those who reject Singar's account on the ground that the idea of negritude is as racist as the idea of assimilation, which undermines African civilization. The idea of a black personality based on the peculiarity of blackness cannot stand serious scrutiny, just like white personality cannot. Furthermore, there are objections to Singar's negritude on the ground that it is an inadequate way of showing or proclaiming the contributions of Africans to world civilization, or even of announcing its readiness to make an impact. According to one critic, the tiger does not announce its strength by proclaiming its tigritude. These objections derive their import from the controversial concept of race, which seems to play a crucial role in Singar's negritude. Is Singar saying that certain physical traits are common to all blacks and that corresponding to these traits are certain values? This will be hard to defend. What is the value of color? Perhaps Singar means something else, that certain cultural values are common to a people on account of historical and environmental factors, but it is not necessary for such a people to constitute a race. They are a cultural community. Negritude is more of a cultural concept than a racial one. Singar himself explains culture as a psychic constitution which in each people explains its civilization. In other words, it is a certain way proper to each people of feeling and thinking, of expressing itself and of acting. And this certain way or character, as we would say today, is the symbiosis of the geography and history, or race and ethnic group. Negritude is therefore less of a physical factor than a historical one. In answer to the objection that the essential traits of negritude can be identified in other cultures besides African, Singar answers, I quote, I do not deny it. Each people's countenance reflects the diverse traits of human condition. But I maintain that these traits are found nowhere else in exactly this same balance, this same lighting. Nowhere else has rhythm reigned so despotically. Unquote. Finally, there is the problem of the validity of Singar's claim that the ultimate reality of black African ontology is the philosophy of life forces. This is a metaphysical position which he takes over from Father Temples, one of the foremost Africanists, to provide an account of the African traditional worldview. But this position of Father Temples has been vigorously contested by Africans themselves. It has been suggested that African cultures and personalities are diverse and that we cannot legitimately talk of the ultimate reality as conceived by Africans as a whole, and even less talk of blacks all over the world. Singer like Father Temples is therefore guilty of hasty generalization. Negritude is tied up with African socialism as its foundation. Culture, according to Senghor, is the basic precondition of politics. It cannot be treated as an appendage to politics. But if negritude as a cultural foundation has problems, African socialism, its outcome, cannot escape unscathed. Thus, Singh's contemporaries, including Nkrumah, objected to the notion of African socialism as unserious because it is based on a false impression of traditional African societies. Nkrumah further objects to Senghorian suggestion that the positive contributions of colonialism, such as the economic and technical infrastructure, be incorporated and accommodated by Senegal. Nkrumah observes that these can be shown to be imbued with a particular socio political philosophy which is incompatible with the philosophy underlying communalism, and the desired accommodation would prove only a socio political mirage. Ezekiel Maflele developed similar objection to negritude in his work The African Image. Singar's account of the ontology and epistemology of traditional Africa also comes under Nkrumah's X. To Singar's notion of the African's knowledge by intuition and confrontation, Nkrumah argues that socialism cannot be founded on this kind of metaphysics of knowledge, and to suppose that there are tribal, national, or racial socialisms is to abandon objectivity in favor of chauvinism. To conclude, Senghor's philosophy no doubt addresses the question of ultimate reality and meaning underlying the primacy of rhythm. In spite of the objections raised by critics, his originality on the question he raised and the answers he provided is unquestionable. His basic concern is the need to have all cultural groups contribute to the civilization of the universal. Leaving out one group by underestimating its contribution cannot help the search for meaning in our heterogeneous world. Each cultural community must therefore rediscover its essence and be ready to contribute to the civilization of the universal.